Hello, 40 Waters. Longtime listeners of the show will know that I'm a big believer in education, especially music education, and I'm excited to announce that this episode is brought to you by TrueFire. I've partnered with TrueFire to bring you an opportunity to get into their lessons at an affordable rate in a way that's going to help you, help the podcast, and get you playing more guitar. I'm excited to say that you can use the code 40WATT, 40WATT, at checkout to get 40% off your first or next purchase through TrueFire. That includes their All Access Pass to have access to all of their lessons and videos and jams. I highly recommend it. I use it myself. I'm a huge fan. I truly believe in TrueFire's motto of live, practice, and play. Please use the link below to get started, and happy learning. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. 40 Watt Podcast, back after a slight pause. Y'all, I decided COVID was so much fun that I needed to get sick again, this time with some mysterious illness that I have no idea what it was, but it knocked me out at 103 fever for a couple of days. I've never gotten 100 plus fever twice in a year, and I decided it would be a great idea to have 100 plus fever twice in 2 months. But we're back in the saddle. We're back doing this, putting out episodes because we got a whole lot of great stuff we want to talk about the rest of this year. So this week, we are 2 weeks post NAMM, week and a half, somewhere around there. And this week, I've got on the podcast 40 Watt West Coast representative, David, and from the Timber Owls. So first of all, David, welcome to the podcast, sir.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. I'm glad we could finally get together.
Yeah, and not be deathly ill. I'm still coughing a little bit, so listeners, I apologize if you catch a cough in the microphone. I'm still coughing from COVID. It still hasn't gone away. This is terrible. As if on cue. So full disclosure, David is not only a great musician, a great guitar player. He's gonna deny that, but don't listen to him. He's also one of my Patreon backers, and so David approached me, said he wanted to go to Summer NAMM. So I was like, hey, I'm Summer NAMM. It is Summer NAMM, but NAMM wanted to go to NAMM. And I was like, I can't go to NAMM. You want to go? And I'll send you as 40 Watt Podcast. It'll be great because then you can make contacts for me since I can't be there. So David did that. But first of all, let's back up. Take a second. David, who are you? How'd you get into music? How'd you get into guitar, doing all the things?
Yeah, that's the long story. I think I know I'm unique in the fact that I am not a transplant of LA. I live in Southern California, live in Los Angeles. I was born and raised here.
So you're a townie.
Yeah, I am. I did not come here, with the waitress dreams of becoming a musician. But I always grew up around music. My mom had family members that played, like my grandfather on my mom's side was like a pastor basically and played in the church. I have some ancestors on her side that played music, and my dad probably was the biggest musical influence. He was like what I would call a bedroom guitarist. So he always had guitars sitting around the house. He had a big studio, that he built in the garage and had a big hi-fi stereo system. So he's always listening to music. So I kind of just grew up around it from a young age. But interestingly enough, I never wanted to pursue it when I was a kid. I was just, wanted to jump off roofs and do kid stuff, climbing kids' backyards and stuff. So it wasn't until I got a little older that I got into music. But I do have a lot of formative memories of him trying to show me, this album and trying to give me all the history behind music. Like this guitar player played on this album with this drummer and this drummer did that, and just all this history that I did not care about as a kid. And it wasn't
not
until
even little.
Yeah, right. History is not for kids. It wasn't until probably end of elementary school, so like third, fourth, fifth grade, I actually started to get kind of into music. And what set it off was this was the late 90s, if anyone remembers.
Yeah.
And this was the big pop music era. And so Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, wow, her name's escaping me now. Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, all those people came out at the same time. And that was right when MTV was still showing music videos and trying to appeal to the kids. And so I got caught up in that and was like, hey, this is awesome. And so tried to show my dad like this is music, and he's like, that's not music, you know.
Yeah, I
But that
remember
was
that
kind of
era. I was a teenager in those days, and I remember trying to learn "Livin' La Vida Loca" on guitar. Man, it
yeah,
had a
those
great
songs
guitar
are
part.
they're very complicated when you look at them. I was too young to really appreciate all of the composition that goes into like popular music from the 90s. Now it's a lot different, I think, but
Yeah,
now that I listen to them, like, wow, that's very complex chording and things. But that's kind of what got me into music, and then started listening to more and more pop music, and that transitioned into this weird time period between elementary school and middle school, basically, where over the summer, that's when I got into like rock music. I
okay.
remember I got this CD sampler from like Tower Records, and it had
Rest in
Incubus.
peace.
Yeah, right. The Tower Records on Sunset Boulevard
Yeah.
too, I'm sure, because that's where my dad always took us. But it was a compilation. It had Incubus, Linkin Park, all those like post like new metal kind of bands before they got famous.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing Linkin Park and be like, "What is this? This is awesome." He's screaming and he's singing about things that I don't understand yet, but I feel like I need to understand. So right, but that was the summer between fifth and sixth grade. So basically elementary school, middle school. So when I went to middle school, I was like, I'm gonna start a band like Linkin Park. I'm gonna be a rap rock musician. So it was this weird, perfect timing of then I was like starting to go into adult, like teenage years, and starting to want to get into music. And I'd met
Yeah.
another kid in sixth grade that had went through the same thing, same album. It's like, you have that album, I have that album. Linkin Park, let's start a band. And so that's when I decided, like, hey, I'm gonna start learning how to play music. So I joined the school band, and I was playing drums. So I had this idea, like, I'm going to learn how to play drums and be a big rock musician, not fully understanding that drums in middle school is not the kind of drumming you want to do. It's all
No.
marches, it's all just like playing classical music with a snare drum. So it took me like a year to figure out like how to play an actual drum beat, with a hi-hat and everything. And but that was the first instrument I started learning, and so me and that friend started a band, and we had a notebook where we just passed lyrics back and forth, because we couldn't really
Yeah.
play anything. He played clarinet in the band, and I played drums, and neither of those instruments lend themselves to writing Linkin Park music.
No. It's also hard
So
to sing while you're playing clarinet.
yeah, just a little. Um, so I then in seventh grade, the both of us decided this wasn't working. We should start learning how to play other stuff. So then that's when I started playing guitar. Was in seventh grade, I think. So that was like 2001.
Okay.
So it was. I started learning a little bit before I think a lot of other people, and me and him were like the two weirdos that played guitar, and everyone else was like, they're weird. They have long hair, you know.
See, it's
Mm-hmm.
so weird when I hear these stories because I never had this, right? I took up guitar my senior year of high school. And there were a handful of others, but I went to this like super country bumpkin high school. You know what I mean? Like middle literally there's not a three-way red light in the entire county I went to high school. There's some blinking red lights at four-way stops, but that's it. There's not an actual traffic light. And so like graduating class of 25, um oh yeah,
See, that's
tiny school.
unfathomable to me. Even in my little town, I was like, our graduating class like 2,500 or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure there were 2,500 people my age in the county. So, that's just tiny school. So like, yeah, senior year I could strum some acoustic chords and like everyone was into country music, like hardcore, like late 90s country music. Which is fine. I didn't hate it. It's not really my thing, but like if you make me listen to country music now, I tend to gravitate towards that 90s stuff and then like the super classic stuff that like, my uncle used to listen to and like my mom would listen to. My mom was a big Patsy Cline fan and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But I never had that growing up. Like I didn't have those. I played football and I played baseball and didn't play music, because it just wasn't a thing. So it's always interesting to hear these stories where like, yeah, we were the weird kids with long hair that, played guitar. And it's like, we didn't have any of those.
Yeah, I mean, it was weird too because, like I said, I grew up around it, so it was kind of like a natural progression. And even when I started playing drums, I kind of started playing drums because I didn't want to play guitar because I was like, my dad plays guitar. It's not cool. The drums are the loud thing. I don't want to be
Yeah.
like him, So, but then eventually I was like, well, I guess there's guitars sitting around. I might as well just see if they work. And I didn't think about it at the time because it just seemed so natural. But as I got older, I was like looking around, I was like, no one's really playing guitar as much. Like, they had guitar clubs in my high school, and it was always like 8 people would start in the club, and then by the end of the club there's like 2 people left, and it's always me and my buddy Andrew, like the only ones left. But it was cool because it gave us an outlet,
Yeah.
to kind of foster an identity that was during that time where you're so developmentally like curious and confused, and you don't really. I have like my wife, we talk about our like upbringings and our middle school years especially a lot, and she's like, oh, our experiences were so different, and all the people my age that were going through identity crises after high school, and like, I don't know what I want to do, I don't know where I want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I never had that because at least I had, some part of my identity that I had clearly defined as like, I'm kind of a musician, or at least I play music.
Yeah.
So,
That's so
but
much healthier than me. I wrapped up my identity in high school with playing football, and I I wasn't even sure I was going to go to college at first, and like I went to college, and then decided, yeah, I'm going to go out, talk to the coach, said I was going to go out for football and actually play football in college, small college, and then I shattered my ankle doing backflips on a trampoline. Yeah, that's a hell of a way to do it. And spent 8 weeks on crutches
oof.
and needed something to do. And that's when I had already been playing guitar for about a year, and so that's when I took guitar seriously. And I was like, that's when I started to identify with music first and foremost over football, and never did end up playing college football, and that's okay. I wish I had. I wish I'd played at least a year, but never ended up doing it.
Now you'll never know. If only. It's
If
funny you say that because I have a similar experience where I was going to be a parkour athlete, if you know what that is.
I do.
Yeah, until I nearly
I've
broke
seen
my
video.
neck.
It's not
Yeah,
much of a thing over here, but I've seen videos.
yeah, it's not much of a thing here, and now I see why. I'm like, oh, yeah, I was trying to do a backflip similarly to you in my friend's backyard on a pallet, and I went to jump, and the pallet broke, and I was already
Oh,
in the air at this point, so I just landed on my head, and whole body kept going,
oh,
which, you're 17, 18, you just get up and like, oh, my neck hurts, and don't go to the hospital. Like,
yep,
and now I
yeah.
can't look all the way up or down anymore, but it's fine. I lived.
It's fine.
But that was
My
the
my
end of
ankle
my
hurts when the
parkour
weather
career.
changes.
Yeah.
I've got a titanium steel plate and 7 screws still in my leg because of it. So it's I yet to get back on a trampoline, and I never will. It won't happen. It's been 20 plus years. Um, yeah, it's interesting. I always love hearing people's like growing up playing music stories, like because mine, I had a guitar when I was 16, and I have two sisters, and the older of the two sisters, she got mad at me for something and smashed it, which her getting mad at me over something and smashing something was kind of a recurring theme in our growing up. So siblings, she's about a year and a half younger than me. Well, I took up guitar my senior year, and really got serious about it. And about that time, the younger of my two sisters, Jacqueline, took up drums first and then guitar about 3 months later. And so it's interesting because I had this experience growing up where I didn't play guitar until I got honestly a little older for starting to play from all the stories I hear. But my sister gets to tell the story. Oh yeah, my brother played guitar, so I wanted to play guitar when I was 8 and took up guitar. It's this interesting thing. So while you had Andrew, I think you said what his name is,
Yeah.
yeah, I had my 8-year-old sister that I'm 18 and she's 8, and we're playing guitar together, and to this day we still play together all the time. So
That's awesome.
yeah, it's really it's an interesting. It's always fun to hear people's how did you get into doing this? Like what made it a thing for you? Um, I don't have the same band stories though that people have. Like you're like, yes, I wanted to start this Linkin Park, esque band, rap rock, and I'm like, you know that question that you get asked, who's your favorite guitarist?
Hmm.
I'm really bad at that question. I'm really, because I'm like, I don't know. I just like songs and I like playing guitar to songs. And so I like songwriters more than I've ever liked guitar players. It's
I
weird.
understand that. Yeah. Well, to that though, I do have a question for you now that I think
Oh,
you asked is what, when you think back, what can you think of the earliest guitar sound or, memory that you have?
oh, so there's a couple. Um, but I can there's two like real like turning points in my guitar playing that I remember very, very distinctly. And I've talked about one on the podcast before. Um, and it was I was home from college. It was either a weekend or summer. I literally don't remember the time of year it was, but I was like 19, 20, right? Somewhere in that age. And I'd just been playing acoustic guitar, playing like country songs and praise and worship songs, and with the BSU, and doing that kind of thing because I'd started out playing guitar because I had friends who led praise and worship, and I was learning from them. And woke up in the middle of the night. I had fallen asleep on the couch with the TV on, and PBS was on, and it was Stevie Ray Vaughan, Austin City Limits, the second
I was
airing,
gonna say
the
the first,
second
the
one he
second,
did. Yeah,
second.
the
Oh,
second
nice.
one. The one where he wasn't, sweating out all the cocaine, like he was
Yeah,
stone cold sober, and he
he
was
was just
on
sweating
it. I mean,
because he was sober.
yeah, he was just ripping things up, and it was like I think that was filmed in like '89. Um, anyway, that was like my first real experience of like, oh, that's electric guitar. Like that's electric guitar. I get it.
Hmm.
And of course, that's a really extreme example of that's electric guitar. And yes, I spent more years than I want to talk about being that Strat into a Fender amp guy trying to sound like Stevie Ray Vaughan with a tube screamer. I did it. A lot of people did it. It's okay. There's no shame in that. But the other was, and this is so weird, and I have never told this story, but there was like, so you're playing guitar, you're learning things, you're trying to pick out parts, you're trying to learn songs, right? And this is like super, super early internet days, so there isn't like a ton of tab out there. You get like Guitar World magazine, which I think tonight I'm gonna go get all my Guitar World and Guitar Player magazines out of storage and like bring them in and figure out what I have and start going through like old lesson articles because some of those are so good. Um, but I was learning this Garth Brooks song called "The Night I Called the Old Man Out," and there's this intro riff that's like da 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 da, and it's like it's just this pentatonic riff. There's nothing spectacular about it, but I figured it out. I like picked it
Nice.
out and could play it. And it was the first time that I had picked something out by ear and could play like what I heard on the record. And there is no drug, no alcohol, no pheromone induced high that is like that first moment of learning a song for the first time ever, and
On
like
your
feeling
own
like
too.
I can do this. Yeah,
Yeah.
on your own. I am a guitarist. There was that moment. And so I remember that very, very clearly. I showed everybody who would stop and listen to me that I could play that riff. I was so excited. And it's not as adorable when a 19-year-old is doing it as when like a 9-year-old goes, "Look, mommy, look what I can play." I was like, "Look, mommy, well, look what I can play." So it's like, it's like, but I remember that moment, and those are the two like guitar moments. Now there have
Hmm.
been guitar moments since then, but those are the ones that really were like the initial, oh, I want to do this. Like not just, oh, I like guitar, I like playing music. Oh no, I want to be a guitarist. So
Yeah, I'm curious if every musician or guitarist has that moment where they realize like I want to do this. That's what I want to do, And it can like manifest in so many ways. Like I want to be Stevie Ray Vaughan. I want to be the best
right.
shredder ever. I want to be Eddie Van Halen. I know I had a similar experience to you where I was like, I want to be a songwriter. It wasn't necessarily I want to shred all day, every day and tap. Because when I was in middle school, I was, like I said, playing in the band, playing drums. And so learning lots of marches, learning lots of boring stuff. And we had to practice like 2 hours a week. So we had this practice sheet we'd have to fill out and have someone sign off like 20 minutes a day, have someone sign off that you practiced. And the teacher was very loose about it though. So he was like, you
Yeah.
don't have to play your instrument if you are playing a flute, if you're playing a piano, if you're reading music, listening to music that you wouldn't listen to, something about music you got to do 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week or whatever it was. And so I remember one weekend I went home to my dad's house and I hadn't done any practicing during the week. So I was like, I got to get it all done today. So I was just got tired of making noise on the drums. And he had this old Alessi's like keyboard,
Oh
So I
yeah.
sat at that and I was just like hammering on it. I'm like, gotta get my 20 minutes done. Just sit here, hit the, like keyboard cat all over it. And my dad was walking by and he stopped and he's like, oh, you're playing that one song. He's like, what one song? He's like, hang on. And my dad is like a huge music buff. He had this really intense, like musical knowledge, like basically a librarian level, like knowledge of music. And he had thousands of CDs just on the shelf in the music room. And so he walked
Mm-hmm.
over to the one shelf that had it, grabbed the CD off the shelf, popped it in the CD player, like looked at the back and went to track 3 and hit play. And what started playing was Broadway by the Goo Goo Dolls. And the
Oh
intro to that
yeah.
song, it's very simple. It's just 2 chords, just C to A. And that's what I was doing on the piano because it's like da 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 da, but it happened to be in the same rhythm, and I wasn't trying to do that. I was just trying to get through practicing. And this was like 2000, 2001, so the album had just come out a couple of years before, and that song
Right.
started playing, and I remember like, oh, I remember this song being on the radio, a couple of years ago. And so I went to listen to the song again, and then I kind of got lost listening to the song, and I think I hit back one too many times and went to the second song instead of the third song, and that was Slide, also by Goo Goo Dolls. And I was like, I remember this
Yeah.
song on the radio. And then I sat down and listened to the whole album and just like, man, this Slide was on here, Black Balloon, all these songs I remember from hearing on the radio. And then it got toward the end of the album and Iris, their big hit came on. And I
Yeah.
distinctly remember that. And I stopped what I was doing. I was like, I don't know why it resonated with me, but I heard that and I went, I want to write songs like that. And it was I distinctly remember that moment just sitting in, my dad's living room, basically hearing that and going, I want to write songs like that. And it was a weird thought to think back on, like, not, I want to play like the guitar solo, like, because there's a guitar solo in that song. I want to
Yeah.
shred slide guitar like that solo. I want to, play drums like there wasn't any of those things. It was literally, I want to write a song that's like this song. And that's
Yeah.
when I started really starting to play guitar more and starting to want to be a songwriter. So it's interesting that I had that particular moment, just like you had your own moment. And also thinking back further, the earliest memories of guitar beyond just my dad playing guitar, in the basement, in his studio, was probably Michael Jackson records, which is interesting because you don't think of Michael Jackson as guitar oriented music. You just think
But you
Michael Jackson
should.
singing. Yeah, because then you listen to that, the parts are so perfect for those songs that you don't recognize it, you don't realize it until you sit and you try to dissect it. And if you mentally remove the guitar from any Michael Jackson song, you're not going to know what it is, you know. But
Exactly.
I listen to those albums now, and I just remember being like a little kid and hearing that being like some of the first earliest memories of music, basically.
We used to cover Beat It in a cover band that I was in. And first of all, that song goes over really, really well live.
Mm-hmm.
Do it. If you're in a cover band and you're not covering Beat It, fix that. If you can't sing it in that register, that's fine. Bring it down the octave. People still love it. Um, I do a lot of bringing songs down an octave now as I'm getting older and the voice can't quite do the high stuff that it used to do. But when I started learning those parts, first of all, everybody talks about, the solo to Beat It because Eddie Van Halen did the tapping and the whammy bar and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you are overlooking Steve Lukather's rhythm parts in that song, you are overlooking a masterpiece in pop guitar playing because it is so good. It's so simple, but it is so perfect. So
That
I
is
go,
all of his parts, I feel like. Even
yeah,
Human Nature, he played the guitar part in Human Nature, and it is
yeah.
so essential to that song, but you don't think about it, unless
Mm-mm.
you sit there and you analyze it and you're like, he's doing so much by doing so little. And I think Steve Lukather is one of those people that I didn't want to love because I was like always shoved in my face as a kid because, you know, my dad was like, Toto's the best band ever. Steve
Yeah,
Lukather's the
I was
greatest guitar
intentionally
player.
not bringing up the Toto stuff. It's like don't even go to that stuff. Go look up his discography of things that he played, because he played on everything.
Oh yeah, like
Like
Stevie
he was
Stevens and
yeah, he was a
everybody.
first call session guy.
Yeah.
And the he I think, as heavily praised as he is, he's underrated. Like, we still don't talk about the work he did enough,
Oh yeah,
because
especially
it's
his
so
rhythm
good.
work because everyone thinks Lukather just soloing all day,
Yeah.
but his rhythm work is just. Now I'm starting to sound like my dad when I say all this. You know, I'm going to give you a history lesson.
Well, back in my day,
Right.
kid.
Yeah.
All right, so I agree. And the songwriting thing, that's another reason I have not learned a lot of guitar solos. I've not learned a whole bunch of them. I have the handful that I bothered to sit down and learn. Many of them I've forgotten. You know, just like everybody else, I sat down and learned the Hotel California solo at one point.
I never
And then I
learned
was
that.
like, see, you should. Now, when it's like, I don't cover Hotel California in my band. We didn't cover it in that cover band, but occasionally I'll get hired to sit in and fill in, and for another band that does it. And by the way, it's really hard if you're in a band where you're the only guitar player. It's like, okay, I've got to decide what parts are important. Um, so I do, like, I start out the solo similarly, and then I play to the chord progression, and then I try to end the solo, or close to ending the song, with that same, like, um arpeggio ending that they do.
Oh yeah, the like harmonized. Yeah,
Yeah,
you just
that
got to
part. And
bookend any guitar solo with
that's
the
it.
part that people know in the beginning and close enough at the end. Like,
That's it. And it's so fun. So I learned that at one point, and I learned the Beat It solo. I learned the solo from Garth Brooks' Friends in Low Places. It's a fun little solo. It's like, I don't know, it's not a long one. You should learn it. It's got a couple of really cool little licks in it. But I always was more interested in, I'd like, oh, Hendrix is the perfect example, right? Everybody's learning Hendrix, and they're like, oh, I want to learn Red House, and I want to learn, like, all the licks to, like, Hey Joe, and, like, I want to learn the chord progressions and the inversions he used at the rhythm guitar for Hey Joe. I wanted to learn, uh, Axis Bold as Love, because the chord progression is so different.
mm-hmm.
And I wanted to learn. To this day, it's trite. You can call me basic if you want to. My favorite Hendrix song is still Little Wing,
I was about to say he's going to
because
say Little Wing. I know it.
yeah, because that chord progression and that phrase, first of all, it is the long, find me another one. It is the longest musical phrase in pop music. I don't know another musical phrase that goes that long before it reaches the cadence.
mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's a little nerdy speak, but
I didn't
it's
understand a word you
brilliant.
said, but yeah.
That's totally okay. Um, it, very very simply put, oh my gosh, oversimplifying. It has the longest progression before it repeats,
Mm-hmm. There we go.
and before it ends the musical sentence and starts a new one. So, um, it's wild. I'm not going to count bars. I could sit here and count bars, but I'm not going to do it because that's too nerdy for this podcast, and this is a pretty nerdy podcast. But I loved that kind of stuff. Like, I never sat out to learn all of Hendrix's licks. I eventually learned a few things because you can't avoid them. But I wanted to learn how the song structure worked more than I wanted to learn the hot guitar parts to it. It's a wild time.
Yeah,
All
part
right,
of my
so we've
problem
covered
is
that.
oh, sorry. I was going to say part of my
Oh no,
problem
go
is
ahead, go ahead.
I have some weird disconnect between my brain and my hands where I might hear something in my head and like, okay, and try to get it down to my hands and it just does not work. It doesn't sound the same in my head as when it came out in my hand, so I'm really bad at learning songs verbatim, you
Yeah.
know. I always get to the point where I'm like,
I
that sounds close enough. No one's going to care.
when I think it, so when Linda Taylor was on the podcast, and we got to talking about it. I can't remember if this was on the podcast or in like our pre-conversation before we started recording, or in between episodes, between the Patreon episode and the regular episode. But we talked about I have this. I discovered this when I was in school for music. I discovered it even before then. There's a weird disconnect in my brain somewhere where I will hear a pitch and I will try to replicate that pitch. And what I actually do is I hit a harmony of that pitch.
Mm-hmm.
And it is sometimes very hard for me to peel back and go, okay, that's the fourth. I need to peel back and play, I'm hearing the fourth. I think this song is in D. It's really in A. Um, and it's a weird thing in my brain. Sometimes, most of the time it happens. Sometimes it doesn't. And so it made learning songs for a long, long time really hard. I still have that problem. There are certain songs that I cannot sing in my band because I cannot sing the melody. For some reason, I will always sing a harmony part.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's such a weird disconnect. And so I talked to Linda Taylor about it. She said, I know someone else who has that exact same issue. Like it's a real thing. I thought I was just bad. I thought I just had bad ears. But no, it's a legitimate, somewhere in my head, there's a relation that is wrong. And I've had to learn to adjust to it.
Maybe I've got that too. I don't know. Cause like my brother, I have an older brother and he does music too. Part of that is he plays drums. And when I was in middle school learning how to play drums, I would have my drum set out at home and like like I said, took me a year to play a drum beat. And one day he just sat down and he's like, oh, you're trying to do this? Da, 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 and played a perfect beat. And I was like, how do you know how to do that? I was like, I don't know. I just did what you did. And I was very mad because I was like, I just spent a year learning how to do that. You did it in 2 seconds. And then it got to the point
where, by the way.
Yeah, right.
That's my
people
sister.
that are better than you. How dare they?
I know. It's like she just does it. It just happens. So
yeah,
that's that it. That's that it that everybody talks about it. By the way, that's that it. They've got it. My sister has it.
Yeah, I don't know if he has it. If he does, he doesn't care if he has it or not. He's much more laid back than I am. But I was like, how dare you? I quit drums. You can have them. I'm play guitar. Screw this. And the real reality is he got much better drums much faster than I did. So I was like, well, I'm playing guitar now anyway. I'm doing this singer-songwriter thing. I'm going to make it. You can play drums. It's fine. But he also plays guitar and his ear is much better than mine. He could learn songs by ear just by hearing it. And then he would like figure it out really quick. And I would have to sit there for hours and hours and try to get the note. And I'm like, this chord is like 90% right, but it's not. And then he'd be like, your fingers are upside down. You're doing an inversion or something like that. And I was like, oh, that sounds right now. But yeah, so I don't know if that maybe is a contributing factor to me being a better songwriter is because I get things wrong and I go, well, it sounds good to me,
Yeah, it definitely makes it different. Interesting. I don't know. I'm a very frustrated songwriter. I hate everything I write, but that's for another podcast. That's for an anger-based podcast. So we talked about. I'm going to call it guitar origin stories. In fact, I may have to start a whole series of just getting people to send me their guitar origin stories. I want to hear them. I want to hear these stories. So, listeners, if you want to, feel free to contact me, 40wattpodcast@gmail.com. Send me your guitar origin story. I want to hear it. Maybe read a few of them out on the podcast. So, full disclosure, David is a Patreon supporter of the podcast. Thank you, David, for being a Patreon supporter. And have a few others. But David wanted to go to NAMM, so let's bring it about. And there was no amount of wanting to go to Anaheim in June in me, because what's that?
Oh, it's not as bad as people think. It's really not.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I've grown up here, so.
Yeah, that's true. But my worry was, and I'm trying to remember when I was in Anaheim last, what month it was. I think it was July. So
I was going to say July probably, because June is not bad because you get June gloom, which is what we call it. I used to work by the beach, like 2 blocks up from the beach. And so every summer we would get all the European tourists coming in. And so they'd come in their beach wear all ready for the beach. And it's like 60 degrees and overcast and gray. And people are like, this is California. It's supposed to be sunny. I'm like, no, come back next month. Try again in July.
Next month. Well, also there's the There's the whole Anaheim, Disney World. Is it Disney World, Disneyland?
Disneyland,
Land,
yes.
Disneyland. Um, and the idea of trying to compete with 113,000 other people for hotel rooms or Airbnb or whatever, um, that sounded awful. And I was like, and then there's just, it's expensive, like to get out there, to do the thing, to do all the stuff. And, spoiler alert, y'all, I don't make any money doing this podcast. So I was like, I cannot afford this. So, but when you said you wanted to go and we started to work out a way for, I was like, well, I've got the I can get the press pass, I can get the in as press. And so you decided to go check it out. And I think, was this your first NAM that you've gone to?
I've gone as a kid,
Okay.
with my dad because he was, you know, vaguely in the music industry and had a lot of friends. So we went at least once or probably twice as a kid. I just remember being a lot of walking and really crowded and a bunch of junk I didn't care about.
Yeah.
So now that's a lot of walking and it's crowded, but this junk I actually care about now. So it's a nice change.
Yeah, it's a welcome change.
Yeah.
So, but so what did you think about the NAM experience overall? I know a lot of people are talking about it was smaller, well, this, that, no Fender, no Gibson, no, the Marshall, none of the big boys.
Yeah,
Um,
we can talk about that because that I think brings up an interesting point. None of the big boys, but overall, one of the things I noticed, maybe not right away, but in reflecting about the experiences, it was really welcoming and open. And as odd as that sounds, I'm sure you experienced the same thing. Kind of like I went there fully not feeling qualified to be there.
right.
I've released nothing of value into the musical world, and I'm just kind of there on your behalf. But as soon as I got there, all the vendors, anyone I talked to, nobody was looking at my badge like, "Who are you? 40? No, 40 watt. You don't have enough followers. I'm not going to talk to you." Every,
Right.
yeah, every vendor, every person I met was just like, "You're here because you want to, engage in the music industry. Like, let's go, let's engage." So it was really a very open and welcoming experience. And as weird and fuzzy and warm as that sounds, it was really nice. The other part is obviously all the people you meet there and the connections you make actually
Right.
feel like, not just a business transaction or something like,
They feel
get
like
to
real
messaging people and talking.
connections.
Yeah, they're real interactions.
Yeah,
So,
and I got that in Summer NAMM. Now, obviously, Summer NAMM last year was much smaller than it ever was. It was super, super small. And that's fine because it was my first time. And I know a lot of people were really disappointed with it. And I get it. I totally understand if they were. But I did manage, like, I got to go, I got to meet, I got to hang out with some pretty awesome and some pretty cool people and get to know people. Smaller booths, that's fine. Um, so I've heard some mixed reviews, and so give me your like opinion. It's like some people felt like because Fender, Gibson, Marshall, those folks weren't there, that it was disappointing. I've had some other people tell me, and a couple of representatives from companies tell me that because they weren't there, they felt like it was easier to get eyes on the smaller companies and make some real
absolutely.
connections.
Yeah. That's the benefit I think of not being there. Obviously gave other companies much more an opportunity to show off their products cuz if Gibson's going to be there and Fender's going to be there, the first thing most people are going to go see is the Gibson booth, the Fender booth to
Mm-hmm.
see all the new stuff. Even if they don't have new stuff, they're going to just see the guitars that they have. But because they weren't there was so much more opportunity, like, well, let's just walk around and see. And there were so many places probably I wouldn't have gone or people I wouldn't have talked to, hadn't Fender and Gibson not been there. So it was
Yeah.
really cool to have a bigger spotlight on the smaller, brands. And a lot of people made their debuts, and there's a lot of cool stuff I saw, which we can talk about if you want.
Yeah, no, we definitely want to talk about the awesome stuff. I wanted to make an additional thing though, because I've seen, actually saw it just today. For those of you that want to know, we're recording on June 15th. Um, uh, Hopefully, I'll get this out tomorrow. We'll see. Hopefully, you're hearing this on June 16th. But today, JHS had a live stream, and it was like new and notable, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I saw
And
that. Yeah.
yeah, and there was some talk in there about the NAM experience and some just talking about, and a lot of people in the chat were like, NAM is dead, NAM is useless, NAM doesn't make any sense, everything's online anyway. Oh, there are no mom and pop shops anymore, it's just Sweetwater. Not true, not true, not true, not true.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that I think that gets lost when a lot of the YouTubers and a lot of the podcasters and a lot of the people in the guitar influencer space talk about NAMM, they forget guitar isn't the only instrument at NAMM. And
Yes.
not every other aspect of the music industry, musical instrument industry, has the influencers that guitar has. You don't get that in trumpets. You don't get that in cellos. You don't get that over you don't even get it quite as much. There's a huge synthesizer following. I get it, but it's still not like the guitar uh YouTuber podcasting
Influence,
space.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, influencer space. So a lot of those companies still need NAMM to get in stores,
Yeah, and I
especially
think the
school
oh,
instruments people. I
mhm.
was just going to say, especially the people that are putting instruments in these school bands and in these after school programs and stuff like that. They've got to have a way to get out there into those local stores.
Yeah, I think part of the problem with people who say that about NAMM is they don't understand its purpose, obviously. Like,
Mm-hmm.
even for someone like me, I'm not a distributor, I'm not a big household name musician, I'm not really, here to make a name for myself or to have a name that people are going to recognize. At the same time, I went there and I learned about companies I didn't know about. I got to meet people, and through those connections, I've like talked to other people. And so on a individual level, it made sense for me to go. But I can see how some people think that, like, oh, because they're not going to sell me a guitar when I walk in the door, or I don't get to touch a $7,000 guitar and buy it on the floor, it's pointless. It's like, that's not the purpose of NAMM. It's to
Right.
not only get the manufacturers with the distributors, it's also to have that kind of personal connection one on one, I feel, between individuals going and those brands.
Yeah, exactly. Those connections that still need to be made and are still better made in person. Do I think NAM's perfect? No. Do I think it needs to be overhauled big time? Yeah. Like companies can't, especially small companies, can't keep affording the astronomical booth costs to set up at NAMM, then to ship all their stuff, to ship all their employees out that have to come, housing, transportation, food. I think I heard one number for a small-ish company, something it would cost them around like $50,000
Wow.
to go to NAMM between the booth, staff, shipping everything, hotel cost. Like that's a whole lot of money, and there
Yeah.
is a better way to spend that kind of money. But I do feel like NAMM should happen, but it's going to have to revamp how it's done.
Yeah.
Um,
The
I think
interesting
they're
I thought
starting to do
about it.
better about. I was going to say I think they're doing better about embracing the influencer culture and getting them involved because I think that's a big deal. What they need to be doing.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say
Anyway,
it's
sorry.
interesting the way that they'd set it up because I wasn't sure what to expect, but it was pretty equal in terms of guitar stuff, and then they had drums and pro audio in the middle, and then they had like synthesizers and more pro audio on the side. So it was almost like it was cut up into thirds, and it was almost equal. It wasn't just guitars everywhere, and then here's an Oberheim booth. It
Yeah,
was pretty equal on the amounts of things, and then they had the kind of convention center staples where they had like USPS was there, and they had
yeah,
some other interesting companies, but they had people talking to these, they had like TKL was there and other cases and specialty kind of niche market stuff, but people were still visiting and talking to these companies because you're not going to like see those people outside of that space normally unless
right.
they're going door to door shopping basically.
Yeah, and I talked about this before. I think we've talked about this in the Discord, or I've talked in another chat. We who are on social media and on YouTube and paying attention to new releases and new stuff coming out, and like, Chase Bliss is not in stores anymore and they've gone direct, and guitar companies like Novo, that's great. They don't need to go to NAMM. But then I see it because I stay plugged into my local music culture as much as I can. Those of us that are tuned in, listening to the podcast, watching the YouTube channels, and paying attention, getting on all the email lists so we know when new stuff's coming out, we are in the very vast minority of even guitarists. The majority of people who take up guitar and learn guitar buy whatever is available at their local store. They buy those amps. That's why PV runs Mississippi. You know what I mean? Because PV was in every store in Mississippi. Um, my local shop carries Alvarez, GNL, and Tajima, and
Hmm.
so those are the big guitars around here. That's what most people have, and so people think the small local mom and pop shops don't matter anymore because everybody has Sweetwater or everybody has Musician's Friend or Guitar Center. No, majority of people don't, and they go to their local stores, and that's why they need to get brands in, because you know, if your local store only has Boss pedals, of course you're only going to play Boss pedals because that's what because you're not going on tour and trying to pay attention to the latest and greatest, or running a studio. You're just wanting to play at home, and you don't do the YouTube and the podcast thing. So you go to your store, you talk to your local guy, and you say, "Hey, I really need an overdrive pedal." And he says, "Well, we've got the MXR Distortion Plus, and we've got the Boss SD1." And so what do you buy? You buy one of those because that's what
Yeah.
they've got. And so I
Plus,
think
where
we
else?
lose touch with that
Yeah,
when we think about the use of NAMM.
yeah, and the other thing I was going to say about NAMM too is if you're just going off of what you consume via social media or what you see the influencers have posted about NAMM or all the like live feed from NAMM or all the, all of that stuff, it's only such a small fraction of what is actually there. Like, because I
Right.
saw some stuff, I'm like, this was cool, this was awesome. And I kept waiting for more YouTubers to like release content featuring like this guitar because I saw it and I didn't get a chance to play it and nobody posted anything about it. But I was like, I saw it, I know it was there, but it just wasn't represented in social media. And so I think for that reason also NAMM needs to still exist, because where else are you going to go to have so many different brands in one place at one time where you can experience things that you wouldn't experience? Because when you're going to do it through social media, it's only going to give you the algorithm, or it's only going to give you what you can like link, through things you found, but it's
Yeah.
not going to show you stuff outside of that. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's a
And
lot
how
of
else are
stuff
you
I
going to
saw that
find
was
it?
like so cool. I would have never known about this.
Yeah. Like I said, that's the use. That's what NAMM is for. That's why it needs to exist, but it needs to exist in a revamped structure. It cannot keep costing what it costs. It can't. It can't keep it can't exist the way it currently exists. It's got to catch up with the way things work. Hopefully they understand that. I know next year it's in April instead of June, and then the year after that it's supposed to go back to the January, and then if they reintroduce summer in Nashville, I'm assuming that'll be in June.
Hmm.
So they're trying to get back to the regular schedule, it looks like. So we'll see. I'm not going to be able to go next year either. It's actually the same weekend as a blues festival that I play every year. So uh, I've literally played that festival every year that it's existed, so I'm gonna go there. I'm not going to
Well,
not
if you
going
need
to
to
Nam.
send your
So
West Coast head of PR representative again.
yes, so we'll go ahead and say that's going to be on the plan because I'm not going to be able to be there, and I'll make sure to get you buttons and business cards this time. Um, so let's talk about let's go three coolest guitar things you saw at Nam.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
definitely the
top three.
coolest. Well, can I say the Hydra? Because I saw the Hydra guitar, the Steve Vai ridiculous
Oh
4 or 5 neck thing. They had it sitting on the Ibanez booth. The Ibanez booth was actually one of the biggest booths that was on the main floor. I
That makes
think like,
sense.
yeah, Yamaha had a whole room upstairs and Taylor had a whole room. But Ibanez was like the biggest guitar booth there, and they had everyone's model signatures and stuff. And then they had the Steve Vai Hydra sitting on the wall that he used in the music video, and it's ridiculous looking in person. That was honestly not the coolest thing I saw.
No, but
um,
it's still a wild thing to see in person.
it just looks like
I
a 1980s Tim Burton Batman prop. It doesn't look like a real instrument that people should be
that's
playing.
dude, that's what I felt about the Tosin Abasi
Oh, I saw
Music Man.
those. Oh,
That
the
looks like a
Kaizen.
Batman prop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that
Yep.
looks like a Batman prop.
It was
If Batman
surprisingly
played
well
guitar,
balanced, but yeah,
was it?
yeah. I wouldn't buy
I
one, wouldn't
expect
play
it to.
one, but
Yeah, no. See, I expect that guitar to be amazing. I completely expect Ernie Ball to have made an amazing guitar, for Tosinabasi to play something that balances, sounds great, is super fun and great to play, I think it's ugly as sin. Like it looks like a prop from the World of Warcraft movie. Like it looks like a weapon from World of Warcraft. I'm just gonna throw that out there. Um, I can't get into it, and I genuinely don't look at that guitar and instantly go, "Yeah, that's an Ernie Ball." No,
Not
that
even
doesn't look
that's a
like it.
guitar I want to sling on and play. You just pick it up for
Right?
the novelty, you know.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm sure it
It's
plays
like
great.
headless guitars. I don't care if they're the most ergonomic, lightest, best playing guitars. I cannot play one of those. They look too silly for me.
Anyone who's ever seen me play guitar, first of all, knows that I'm an aggressive guitar player when I really get into it, and that I do a lot of very quick slides down the neck, and my hand would just slide off the guitar neck all day long, every day, and it would just drive me crazy because many times the only thing that stops me is the headstock, so I can't do it.
So
So,
real cool things though that I saw. I spent a lot of time in the boutique guitar area. So Doug Cower was there. Got to meet
mm-hmm,
him. I told him
such a
things that I
great
will
dude.
tell you off camera that
Okay.
are not appropriate for this podcast, even if you put the E there. Um, but yeah, I got to meet him, got to meet his wife, got to see his guitars in person. That he had four guitars that were the same color. It was a Tahitian coral, is what he called it. And
Yeah.
pictures do not do those guitars justice. They always look weird orange or weird pink in the pictures. They were like a beautiful sunset mix. So those were cool to see. And I'm sure you would have appreciated them.
Yes. I
Yeah.
mean, I well, hold on.
There we go. There's both
I'm
of
a
them.
big I'm a yeah, I'm a big Cower fan. I literally want one of everything he's made. I can't afford it, but I want one of everything he's made.
Plus, he's just a
So,
funny,
I
nice, cool dude. His name tag said likable
one of the best
supervillain
people.
on it. That was like the cool. That was the funny thing. I was getting real like Max Zorin vibes off him. So that was one of the cool things I saw. Also in that area, they had these guitars that I saw the first day I was there and thought they were weird, and they were called Verso guitars, and they
Oh,
look like
yeah.
IKEA furniture, and they are made out of metal. They're aluminum bodied guitars. And I remember what's funny is I was walking, and the reason I stopped at that booth is because Rhett Scholl was standing right there and looking at him. And I was like, oh, hey, it's Rhett Scholl. That guy's like 10 feet tall. And then I
Yeah,
was
he's
like,
real
oh,
tall.
yeah, I was like, what are those weird guitars he's looking at? Must be one of those expensive boutique things that people just make because they're cool. Um, but then I went back the second day and looked at him closer and got to talking to the owner whose name is Robin and who makes them.
For the YouTube folks.
Yeah, it's IKEA furniture, but it's cool IKEA furniture you can play. So it's like the shape of a bee. It's made out of aluminum or something. And the cool feature that I didn't even think about is he makes these pickups on them that are really flat. So they're almost like arch top pickups, but because it's on
Yeah,
a
like the
metal
floating stuff.
body, yeah, you can move them around. So you can tilt them
Oh.
if you want. You can have two pickups and have one do half the strings, the one do the other half, and they're free moving because they're magnets, because that's what pickups are made out of. So you can place
Right.
them
No, that
anywhere
makes
on the
sense.
body. Yeah. So I thought that was really cool, and just the craftsmanship is actually very ergonomic. And so those were like one of the coolest things I saw were Verso instruments.
Yeah. No, they were definitely very interesting looking. You sent me some pictures, and then I saw some more pictures on Instagram, and it yeah, IKEA furniture is a very good descriptor. I also sort of saw them as like I'm trying to think. They almost look like I don't know. It literally looks like some fancy bee in like some like insurance company's logo. Like it comes up and like
Mhm.
spins, and suddenly you realize it's a bee, and then the word comes out after it. I'm like, that okay? That's just weird. But you know, I'm having to drop my preconceived idea of what is and isn't a guitar, and be open to some ideas, because I mean we're we're still literally playing Telecasters that haven't changed in 70 years.
Most guitars have not changed in 70 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So that was cool to see something new and innovative. One of those things that you think is weird and kitschy, and then you look at it and it's like, actually, it's making forward moves in design and stuff. So that was cool. What else did I see? I met the guys from Kithara Guitars,
Yeah.
they're like a boutique guitar maker out of Ireland, and they make kind
Mm-hmm.
of classic inspired guitars, so S style guitars, T style guitars. Um, I believe Ariel Posen plays one and helped design their S style guitar actually. So it was cool because I, was looking at those on Instagram forever, and I was like, hey, they're going to beat NAMM. I should check them out and meet them. And those were really well playing guitars, and they do that new thing that I think a lot of makers are doing, where they'll do a
Mm-hmm.
baritone guitar, but a standard scale baritone guitar, and it
Yes.
played so nice.
I I love that concept, and it's one of those things that I had to remind myself. Um, the thing that makes a guitar a baritone is literally the tuning.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it can be any scale. As someone who has to remember that I have a regular scale guitar tuned to C right now behind me, it's like it's a thing. Um, I like standard scale baritone tuned guitars a lot, because sometimes the longer neck of the guitar makes it awkward for me to play it. I
Yeah.
don't have the longest arms in the world. I'm only 5'9", so you know keep it in. I like the low register, but I don't want to have to reach out as far as I do when I play bass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those were cool,
Yeah.
and they played nice. They do relicking on their guitars, and they're just so
Mm-hmm.
tastefully relics. And relicking is obviously the fad right now, and there's a good way to do it and a bad way, and they do it very well.
So hear me out. How do you feel about stickers?
Did you see that? I saw that. That was at NAMM.
Yes.
Um, that I thought it was a joke. It could have been at a Chipson booth, but they had
I thought it was a
stick
Chips and
on.
Post.
No, it was a real legitimate booth that
Yeah.
was selling stick on relic stickers, basically. So it looked like
Yeah.
worn through wood, or it looked like paint had been knocked off the guitar. I was just, oh man,
It's
those.
so. Have you gone to their website? Have you looked at the other stuff they offer?
No, I have not.
So if you go to their website, they actually offer some pretty cool looking guitar, like really well made. Uh, Stickers is a derogatory term for what they really are. They're like
Decals.
decals or vinyl decals, but the relic ones are stupid. I'm gonna call a spade a spade. Phil X, I love you, man, but holy crap! Of all the things to endorse, I hope he's just doing it out of irony, but they're dumb. But some of their other decals are they're really really cool. Um, I looked at them a few the other day, and I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna put any of them on my guitars, but I could totally see other people doing it and really getting into some of the stuff they offer, and like changing it. They've got like whole body decals. You can completely change your entire guitar body with a decal instead of a refinish. Um,
You're just
it's
wrapping
it's
your
kind of
guitar at that
wild.
point, though.
Yeah, it's essentially a vinyl wrap. They do vinyl wraps as well. Yeah, so it's like
I cannot
I
endorse
could totally
this.
see it. Like I said, I'm not gonna do it, but I could totally see where somebody's just tired of their plain old black Strat. You know what I mean? But they don't want. Nobody wants to strip a poly finish, and they don't want to go through refinishing themselves. And it's reversible. They can just take it off. So I can kind of see it. Like I said,
There's
I'm
no
not gonna
like
do it.
level of value of a guitar where it's gonna offset the amount of ridiculousness and work you're gonna have to do to put it on or take it off in a good way. It's gonna have bubbles in it. People are like, why is that guitar got bubbles
Oh
in it?
yeah. Oh, it's absolutely gonna have bubbles in. Dude, I can't get a screen protector on my
Yeah.
phone without bubbles. There's no way that's not gonna have bubbles underneath it. So, but it's interesting. The relic thing. I love relic guitars. Like anyone who's listened to this podcast knows, I have multiple pre-relic guitars and some that have been legitimately relic. But I love the way they look. stickers are dumb. That is not the way to do it. Look, that sounds like non-committal issues. You need to commit. If you're gonna relic your guitar, you need to mean it. I think Brian Wampler, and Richard Oliver and Blake talked today on Chasing Tone. They said, here's what we should do. We should just sell a package of like hammers and chisels and chains and sandpaper, and it's a relic kit. And we just sell it to people. It's a DIY relic kit. I was like, God, that might actually sell. Look, if these stickers can sell, that can sell.
I wanted to see how people actually relic. That's literally what they do. Like
That's
the
literally
Fender
what they do.
custom shop, when you get all the checkered lines in the finish, like they'll just put it in the freezer and take it out of the freezer, and then they take a razor blade and run it across the finish and take a chisel and knock out little pieces of the finish. I'm like, they're literally just doing that.
Yeah.
Anyone can do this.
There's a Premier Guitar video of a shop tour at Novo, and they take them through some of their relicking process. And it's literally, dude picks up a rock and starts hitting the guitar. And like, it's not completely random, but it's literally a rock and a guitar. And they showed the deep freezer that they put their guitars in. They said, we won't tell you more about the process than that for the relic checking, because they do really, really good finish checking.
I can't get behind finish checking. That's the one thing of relicking I don't like.
Really?
I can go worn through finish. I can go like finish on top of finish with some of it peeking through and sanded off bits, but just the checking, I don't like checking. Even in vintage guitars, I'm like, ugh. I don't know. That's just my
I don't
thing.
mind it. I kind of like it. But it is definitely, it's all an acquired taste. You know, it's all a thing. Like, I got to tell you, it's like I've vacillated on selling my Les Paul a couple of times, and there's a part of me that's like, you know what? Just put it in the freezer. Let's go. Like, if you're gonna keep it, mean it. Like, let's go. But then I'm like, I chicken out. I can't do it. Like, I'm so terrified to do it.
You can't go back from that.
I
but if you had a sticker,
there's no going back. I'm not getting the sticker. It is not happening.
That's your new gig you can get into. 40-watt podcast finish check stickers.
Look, I can't even, like, I never went through the punk rock thing that like a lot of people did, and so I can't even put like stickers on my guitar in that sense. Like, it drives me crazy. But if I could put a sticker on a guitar, there we go. Got an OG PV angled logo sticker. Just slap that right on the Les Paul.
How long have you been holding on to that gem for?
Yeah. It was in my local guitar store's free sticker pile.
Reagan was still around when that thing was there.
I love it. Like, I told them if they get any more, I want them. I want all of their PV stickers. I don't own a single piece of PV gear anymore, but I still absolutely I have this like nostalgia for the company because I'm in Mississippi and like everybody has PV or has had PV. I played a 410 Classic 50 for a long time. Heavy bastard. You know, it's like but awesome. So we are going to talk about we're going to stop here. We're going to wrap up the regular episode. Y'all, thank you for listening. We're going to go over to Patreon, and we've already talked about one, but I want to hear about the dumbest things you found at NAMM.
Oh yeah, like, that's behind the paywall. You got to pay to find
we're going to put that behind the paywall. The absolute most ridiculous ish you found out there, because there was a lot of it, I'm sure. And we might even talk about people of NAMM. That might have to be a thing. So as we wrap up, I want to start a new thing that, you know, this is where if I were a professional, I would have prepped this ahead of time. But because I'm not a professional, we are going to do this live, and I'm going to figure out if I can actually do this properly. I want to start recognizing my Patreon supporters on the podcast. So that is what we're going to do.
Well, I know where you can start with that one.
Well, I do too, because one of them's easy. This is where I'm going to try to pronounce names too. Y'all notice I did not say David's last name when we started this episode because I've never had to say it out loud to him.
To my
So,
face. Let's see. Let's
I
hear
know,
it.
to your face. All right.
Don't make me
So,
relive my elementary school like trauma of no one being able to say my name.
well, as we wrap up this episode, I want to say a very, very special thanks to all of my Patreon supporters like Scott Hamilton, Giacomo Ride, Andy Koning, Jim Burns, Tom Kelly, Heath Batt, Ben Fair, Rick Calhoun, David Ishizaka, Jeffrey Walks, and Kyle Harris. Thank y'all so much for all the support you give. How'd I do, David?
You did great. On behalf of all Patreon supporters, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, in the meantime, y'all come back next week. We'll have a new episode. I'm going this weekend to see Joey Landreth, the Bros Landreth, play in Nashville. It's going to be fantastic. I'm super excited, super pumped. That's going to be in a couple of days. We're going to have an episode with Joey here soon. We have talked, and we're going to schedule it, make it happen. But he's on tour, so he's kind of busy right now. So, in the meantime, y'all be good to yourselves, be kind to each other, and try to make some noise.